of speakers today, but I will briefly introduce them. I'm honored to have the president of the ICAO Council, Salvatore Ciacchettano, who will be giving us his keynotes. I'll make a presentation on behalf of ICAO. We will have Ronald Hirsch, that is representing IRENA. He is the director of IRENA Innovation and Technology Center. And from IMO Secretariat, I had Camille Bourgeon with us. So Camille is a technical officer at IMO. And to represent the industry, aviation industry, we have the Executive Director of the Air Transport Action Group, LTAG, Haldane Dong. And last but not least, we have the Head of Innovation and Partnership of the International Chamber of Shipping, ICS, Mr. Nelson Mojaro. Welcome to all of you. So with no more delays, I'm honored to call the President of the ICAO Council, Salvatore Ciacchettano, and Salvatore will make our keynote speech. After him, we have a video from the IMO Secretary General. Salvatore, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jane. And I wish to start congratulating you because you are so numerous at the end of so busy 2-3 days. So that means how high is the interest from your side on the topic that we are going to discuss this evening. It's my great pleasure to open this side event of COP28, jointly organized by the International Civil Aviation Organization, the International Maritime Organization, and the International Renewable Energy Agency. This event is convened to shed light on the crucial role played by ICAO, IMO, and IRENA in promoting the clean energy transition for international aviation and shipping in support to the Paris Agreement's temperature goal. Specifically, this event will showcase the recent milestones achieved by ICAO and IMO in tackling carbon and the GHG emissions from international aviation and shipping. In a nutshell, this includes the ICAO long-term aspirational goal of net zero carbon emission in international aviation by 2050, the impactful outcomes of the third ICAO Conference on Aviation Alternative Fuels, the CAF3, held last week in Dubai, and the IMO Strategy on the reduction of GHG emissions from ships adopted earlier this year. Complementing these efforts, the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, will showcase the technological and innovative pathways essential for achieving sustainable transitions in these sectors, drawing insights from its World Energy Transition Outlook. Specifically, looking at the outcome of CAF3, the Conference on Aviation Alternative Fuels that I mentioned was held just 1 week ago here in Dubai, where a new ICAO global framework for sustainable aviation fuels, lower carbon aviation fuels, and other aviation clean energy has been adopted. The framework builds on 4 key elements: unified vision for a clean energy transition, harmonized regulatory foundations, support implementation initiatives, and improve access to financing for related initiatives in the framework also of the No Country Left Behind initiative. Importantly, the vision respects each state's unique circumstances and capabilities, allowing them to contribute within their national timeframes. Jane, you will explain more in detail what is the meaning of these few words. The primary role of the framework is to facilitate the scaling up of sustainable aviation fuels and other clean energies globally. By providing clarity, consistency, and predictability to all stakeholders, including those beyond the aviation sector, we aim to foster an environment ripe for sustainable innovation. I wish to underline in particular that the global framework that has been adopted last week will play a fundamental role in this direction. During the preparatory work, when we had several meetings with investors, fuel producers, the message that was passed was that private funding is available, but a global framework is needed. Now we have a global framework. We aim to work with investors, public and of course private investors and the fuel producers, in order to scale up the production, to invest for production of sustainable aviation fuels. I refer of course to aviation, but you know very well how limited is the availability of sustainable aviation fuels. We know that some regions don't have at all production, so the goal that has been set by 2030 to have a reduction of carbon emissions by 5%, of course will rely on investments. I'm very glad that this morning I had also the opportunity to speak in the presidency roundtable on energy transition, and I had the opportunity also to speak with other relevant investors and head of financial institutions. So it's important that now we open a different relationship and dialogue with these institutions, because we have the opportunity to make progress given that the global framework has been adopted. Regarding CAF 3, of course, I hope to express my sincere gratitude to the United Arab Emirates for hosting CAF 3. So they've been hosting CAF 3 just 1 week before this big event, that you understand how difficult, problematic was this engagement. Their hospitality and support have been decisive in shaping the outcomes we celebrate today. Of course, we should not forget that the achievement of the long-term aspirational goal and 2050 net zero carbon emissions can be achieved through a basket of aviation CO2 emission reduction emissions, and the ICAO will continue to progress on aircraft technology and operational improvements. As you know, the basket of measures includes technology, and I stress every time that every new airplane of the latest generation entering in service and replace an aircraft of the previous generation, this will imply automatically a reduction of 20% of CO2 emissions. Of course, looking at 2050, the traffic will increase, it's evident that, but it's relevant already today for every replacement of an older or previous generation of aircraft. We have already an improvement in terms of CO2 emission reduction. It's expected that starting from 2035 there will be more new technology that will contribute with another further 20% approximately of CO2 emission reduction. The second element of basket of measures is operations. Unfortunately, our skies don't have routes that are straight line. I can tell you how difficult it is to negotiate, to discuss with the states, to make improvements. It requires investments, it requires a lot of discussions, sometimes also political. But this is another element that can contribute, that according to our report, the LTAG report, can contribute with approximately 11% of the CO2 emission reduction between now and 2050. Of course, the third element of the basket of measures are the cleaner energies, as I mentioned before. Regarding the fourth element is the market-based measures. As you know, ICAO has adopted the first global market measures mechanism. It's the CORSIA, and we are glad to inform that it's fully on track. And now we have 126 states that voluntarily participate in the scheme, and almost 100% coverage of CO2 emissions are reported annually by states. A reporting mechanism is fundamental, as we fully understand, in order to have full control of this mechanism. But today I'm delighted to announce that a special ICAO environmental report on international aviation clean and energy transition is also being launched here and at the event today. The report is now available on the ICAO website. The report offers an overview of the substantial work and achievements in ICAO, key insights on the journey to get to the outcomes of CAF3, and the next steps on aviation clean energy transition. I'm sure that you will be impressed not only with the volume of work and its results, but also with its high technical quality. As we stand at the beginning of a new era in international aviation and maritime transport, thanks to the deployment of renewable energy, let's assess this historic moment as a driver for unified action. Together, let us rally behind our most recent achievements and build a future where international transport serves as a global model of sustainability. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. The remarks will be followed by video remark from Mr. Kitak Lim, the Secretary General of IMO. The video, please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's with a great pleasure that the IMO joins forces with ICAO and IRENA for this pivotal side event during COP28. I extend heartfelt gratitude to the government of the United Arab Emirates for hosting this vital UN climate conference, and to each of you for joining us today to discuss innovation and clean energy for international aviation and shipping. In our shared response to the global climate challenge, cooperation across the UN family is of immense significance. Multilateralism is vital in our collective response to the global climate challenge that leaves no one left behind. International shipping and aviation serve as a cornerstone for global trade and connectivity. These pathways toward reducing greenhouse gas emissions share many common approaches and potential solutions. Our focus on technology, alternative fuels, and operational efficiency aims to meet net zero targets while upholding safety and prioritizing the human element. Recognizing the interconnection, both aviation and shipping cannot act in isolation. Clean energy sources are imperative, demanding substantial investment in renewable energy infrastructure, notably for green hydrogen. This unlocks new opportunities, especially for developing countries, including CIS and LDCs. The unanimous adoption in July of the 2023 strategy on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from ships reaffirms IMO member state commitment to phasing out GHG emissions as soon as possible while ensuring a just and equitable transition. This strategy outlines strengthened levels of ambition for 2030 and 2040, aiming for net zero GHG emissions close to 2050, while also respecting diverse national circumstances. In alignment with the 2023 GHG strategy, IMO is actively developing a comprehensive set of mandatory measures to meet the reduction targets, encompassing a marine fuel standard and maritime GHG emissions pricing mechanism. These global measures are set for adoption in 2025 with the entry into force in 2027. IMO remains steadfast in bringing together all stakeholders to establish the necessary global regulatory framework for the decarbonization of international shipping. Our commitment to collaboration within the UN family, particularly with our esteemed colleagues in ICAO and IRENA remains unwavering. And it just remains to wish you a fruitful discussion and a successful COP28 in Dubai. Thank you.
Our immense gratitude to the Secretary General of IMO for his inspiring words. So, as the President said before, we have just launched the special report from ICAO. What I'll be doing following is the presentation that will bring you a little bit more information on what we have been doing in ICAO on the sustainability of aviation. And we have yet another surprise on top of the special report. This audience is the first one. You have a red carpet today. It's our premiere video on the outcomes of our conference last week. So we have worked very hard to put forward a video that would bring out the results of that meeting. So with you, our premiere video for the CAF crew. The video, please.
The 2022 ICAO Assembly reached a historic agreement on a long-term global aspirational goal for international aviation of net zero carbon emissions by 2050, in support of the Paris Agreement's temperature goal. The LTAG is a collective goal, and each state will contribute to its achievement in a socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable manner in accordance with its national circumstances. Recognizing the crucial role of fuels and cleaner energy, which have the largest potential to reduce aviation's CO2 emissions for net zero 2050, ICAO is taking action toward aviation's cleaner energy transition. This transition requires unprecedented capacity building, assistance, and financing to support all states in scaling up the production and deployment of sustainable aviation fuels, lower carbon aviation fuels, and other cleaner energies. ICAO is already taking concrete actions through a series of initiatives, including its ACT-SAF program, involving over 130 states and international organizations. This initiative provides essential support to states in areas such as information, best practices, training, policy development, and feasibility studies. In addition, the Finvest Hub is under development to facilitate access to cleaner energy finance. Cleaner energy is advancing at an unprecedented pace, and ICAO is closely monitoring progress through the ICAO tracker tools and the LTAG stock-taking process. At CAF 3 in Dubai, the 2023 ICAO Conference on Aviation and Alternative Fuels witnessed a significant leap as member states adopted the ICAO Global Framework, striving to achieve a collective global aspirational vision to reduce CO2 emissions in international aviation by 5% by 2030 through the use of sustainable aviation fuels, low-carbon aviation fuels, and other cleaner energies. The framework establishes regulatory foundations for harmonized fuel sustainability certification and life cycle emissions assessment, urging further work on fuel accounting methodologies. It also outlines comprehensive implementation support initiatives at all value chain stages and concrete steps to facilitate financing, emphasizing the imperative that no country is left behind in aviation's cleaner energy transition. This global framework communicates ICAO and its member states' continued leadership in addressing international aviation emissions, providing governments, investors, industry, and fuel producers with clarity, consistency, and predictability on policies, regulations, and investments crucial for the global energy transition in aviation. Vision and framework implementation will undergo regular monitoring and periodic reviews with the aim to establish cleaner energy production sites globally before CAF 4 convenes by 2028, ensuring ambition adjustments align with market developments. Achieving a clean energy future for aviation requires a collective effort from all stakeholders. As the UN Specialized Agency for International Aviation, ICAO will continue to work in close cooperation with its 193 member states, industry, energy sector, financial institutions, and civil society to ensure aviation's journey towards net zero carbon emissions by 2050.
Nice video. So, aviation clean energy transition is on, guys. And let me bear with me a little bit while I make my presentation through a few of the issues that we have just showcased in the video. So, we have had this amazing last week's achievement for the clean energy transition. So, CAF, it was really a huge hit. The achievement we had in all of those areas was what we have heard from the financial sector throughout this year, that they need clear signals to invest in clean energy for aviation. You have the signal, we need investments. So I'll go through the work that led us to that moment in CAF 3, and just bear with me. So the year 2023 is expected to be the warmest year on record, thanks to information that was provided to us by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. We are now fully aware of the implications of human activity on climate change. And in fact, this generation is the first to be born in a world where climate change is a reality. In the recent years, we have witnessed how increase of extreme weather events directly affects aviation's operations and aviation's infrastructure. In order to address climate change, global action is key, and this action requires unprecedented cooperation and deep transformation of the aviation sector on the way we fly, on the airplanes we are building, and on the sources of energy we are using. To that end, the work of ICAO on environmental protection has been quite intense in building the sector's response to this challenge. From the start, it was clear that being an energy-intense activity, aviation would need to explore cleaner sources of energy to achieve a sustainable future. And ICAO has achieved tremendous progress in this area. So today, we have showed you that this clean energy is really serious and it's on, and I'll give you some more insights on that. Just a year ago, in 2022, in October, we had the assembly. So the assembly was a real big, important step because we have aligned the sector with the aspirations of the Paris Agreement in terms of the temperature goal. So the Net-Zero 2050 decision in the last assembly was very important. And we has then recognized immediately the role that clean energy had in achieving this Net-Zero 2050. And we have geared all our focus in a first instance then in looking into the environmental program in ways of developing a global framework that would give us that solid basis in moving forward with the clean energy. So much progress was achieved by ICAO and its 193 member states in 2023, and we have a huge preparatory process that culminated last week with the CAF 3. So in CAF 3, ICAO and its member states took that landmark decision to facilitate the global scale-up in the development, production, and deployment of aviation cleaner energies. And we have adopted the ICAO Global Framework for sustainable aviation fuels, and from now on, as I would say, SAF, low carbon aviation fuels, which we call LCAF, and of course, other aviation cleaner energies. The role of this global framework is really this, providing greater clarity, consistency, and this predictability to all stakeholders, because we need all of that on the policies, on the regulations, on the implementation support, and of course, on the financing and investments required to scale up that amount of energy for aviation. So this robust framework will ensure that all states have equal opportunities to contribute to and benefit from the expected emissions reductions from such aviation cleaner energies, emphasizing the imperative that no country is left behind in aviation clean energy transition. So the framework has 4 building blocks: policy and planning, regulatory framework, implementation support, and financing. And these building blocks are, of course, interconnected, and we need to advance in the 4 fronts if we want to achieve something. Through the framework, ICAO and its member states, and that's the decision on the objective. So the President mentioned it, I'll mention it again. Please realize that we are not talking about the full objectives that we have for aviation reductions in 2030, because there will be also the operational part in the basket of measures, the technology part. You know, we have market-based measures, the scheme, but that was really to give the signal to the investors on how much we wanted to reduce only with cleaner energies. And so the decision was to try to achieve this collective aspirational vision to reduce international aviation CO2 emissions by 5% by 2030 through the use of SAF, LCAF, and other clean energies compared to zero cleaner energy use. So it's really comparing to zero clean energy use at 5% reduction. Each state's special circumstances and respective capabilities will inform its ability to contribute to the vision. From all our states, we have 4 states in the conference that presented a few reservations to the goal. The LTAG report assessed the potential CO2 emissions reductions on the 3 integrated scenarios. Let me reframe to you. The LTAG report was the report that we prepared before we adopted the long-term vision for 2050. That is looking all the measures up in aviation, within aviation measures up to 2050. And that report had 3 assessments, 3 scenarios. And we have the assessments for cleaner energy in those 3 scenarios. But from that report, what was very clear, no matter scenarios you would be looking for, clean energy was the most important element for us to reach the goal. And so ensuring the sustainability of these fuels in a harmonized manner is key. So ICAO already established under CORSIA is our global offsetting scheme, a successful and robust basis for the sustainability certification of eligible fuels, including for SAF and LCAF, and both are feedstock and process agnostic. So what we have under CORSIA, so that everybody understands, it's a criteria for sustainability. You don't use and you don't recognize sustainable aviation fuels that we call SAF if they don't pass that criteria. And that's very important. That's very important. We also talk about process and feedstock agnostic, because we have now, you have seen in our trackers, so many processes. You can fly from so many different feedstocks. And for us, what's very important, if that feedstock passes the criteria, then it's considered SAF. And I want to make that clear on what we are talking about. The decision was that this was for CORSIA. And in the last week, what we decided is that in the framework, those same criteria and approaches will be the basis for us moving forward with our clean energy transition. And that's big on sustainability. So we are not talking theoretically on those criteria. We certify even the certification schemes for sustainability that can do this certification. And we have, last July, the first batches certified on the courses. So we have used the process, we have used the certification. That's not something, flying in the air, it's really happening. Following CAF 3, the framework provides this regulatory foundations for the harmonized fuel sustainability certification and life cycle emissions assessment by accepting the CORSIA criteria and provisions as the basis in moving forward. And we have also agreed in the conference that we need to continue to work on full accounting methodologies to really grasp everything that's happening in the world. The implementation of CORSIA is, of course, on track. We have now 126 states that have voluntarily agreed to participate in the scheme from its first phase next year. And we have every year close to 100% coverage in the reporting by states on their emissions. I'm not kidding. Go to our website. It's 98% of the coverage. We only have to do the gap in the Secretariat for 2%. This is amazing. This is a very high achievement. And we, of course, we do all of that through, we have a monitoring and reporting verification system, the CCR for CORSIA, and all our states use that CCR to report. The framework adopted outlined a comprehensive set of support initiatives, and you have heard of ACSAF. ACSAF is standing on its own now. It has already so many countries and industries, and we are doing a series of training, everything publicly available, all the documents publicly available. Together with the industry, with the NGOs, we have agreed on a template to do feasibility studies throughout the world, and we use different partners to do those feasibility studies now with the states that are willing to look into their potential for SAF. So I will just ask you to look in the website on everything we are doing under ACSAF. It's really great. And we have had a lot of projects coming to fruition, and we have made a lot of announcements during CAF. Another important initiative that I cannot cease to talk about is the action plans. We have started that since 2010. We have 142 states that have put together their action plans and submitted them to ICAO. It's our bottom-up approach where the states inform the measures that they are doing in their aviation and what are their needs for the future so that we can help them achieve what they are aiming for. We are making a review of the guidance to put much more emphasis now on clean energies, and our states are now reviewing the action plans in light of the new information on cleaner energy, and they are driving their objectives and new plans. Many of them will be submitting the revised plan next year in light of the new guidance. We also, I'm pleased to announce that some of the partnerships we had during under the ACSAF, we have voluntary contributions from states. We have now the EU contributing for feasibility studies in 10 African states, France with Ethiopia. We have Netherlands with also 2 states, and we have Airbus, an industry partner, that will also be supporting some feasibility studies in South America. So financing is key, as we have been hearing throughout this COP. That is the same for us in aviation. The LTAG report has calculated 3.2 trillion from sole suppliers investment over the next 30 years cumulative by 2050 if we want to increase the necessary production to get to net zero. And also we have a guidance on financing where our states can take all, see all the steps that can go to get the financing. But we also have something that is quite interesting. Please take a look, which is the rules of thumb. Rules of thumb, we are giving them examples on using their own data, how they can calculate if they want to start an investment on SAF. So it's really hands-on. It's really for our states to use that and see how they can move forward. We are also with a very interesting new initiative, which is the ICAO FinVest Hub, that is to facilitate access to public and private investment, capacities and funding from financial institutions with a particular focus on developing countries and states with particular needs. And we are starting to undertake a study in ICAO for a specific fund. So the vision and the framework implementation will be monitored periodically, as you saw, and in 2028, we want to have the next conference where we will really look into the ambitions. We are we have this impression that we can go much more, but our states, different than other sectors, our states will only do when they have all the studies in front of them. So that's what we are going to do. We are going to monitor and review in 2028 to see the ambition and update on the basis of the market development. So this was very important. By setting the vision, as we said, we have more clarity, consistency, predictability to governments. We can now unlock the full potential of the sector's energy transition globally. But we wanted to have, in addition of the LTAG, more information to CAF before our states could take the decision. And you saw our monitoring tracking tools, and we decided to monitor the announcements that we have on SAF only this year after we did the initial assessments. And you will be very surprised, and we were expecting a lot of information, but from the beginning of the year to date, we had seen more than 100 announcements on clean energy for aviation, most of them on SAF, many of them quantified. If that is not a clean energy transition for aviation, we don't know what else is. Of course, there is, those amounts are a testimony, but it's clear that, we have announcements, and you say, Jane, they are just announcements. Of course, they are announcements, they have numbers, they have intent, but we are not expecting that all these announcements will be realized. They depend on many factors. But it is clear now that by having this ICAO framework, we can really support their realization, and they can really become true projects and start producing SAF. So we are encouraging also in the framework the acceleration to have 100% SAF compatibility in the aircraft engines, and we have just reached this week first flight from transatlantic with 100% powered by SAF. And in closing, I just want to bring to you that we are super serious about that. Industry is on board. The energy producers are on board. We are working very hard with them. And we want to come next year to start talking to you about some of the realizations that we already did with that framework. So thank you so much for your attention. Our next speaker is from IRENA, and IRENA is a very good also stakeholder and collaborator, both for aviation and maritime. And it's my pleasure to call Roland Rush to the podium. Roland.
Thank you very much, Jane, for this opportunity here to speak and for the organization of this event together with ICAO, IMO, and IRENA on innovation and clean energy for international aviation and shipping. Thank you. My name is Roland Rösch. I'm director of IRENA's Innovation and Technology Center, and I will speak today about our perspective on the decarbonization of shipping and aviation. Next slide. I would like to start by underlining that not all solutions are equally suitable for all sectors. Given the physical techno-economic constraints of hydrogen and its derivatives, their use needs to be prioritized for the sectors and applications that can benefit the most. Shipping and aviation, and in particular long-haul shipping and aviation, are some of those sectors where the use of green hydrogen-based fuels not only makes sense, but these fuels are critical for the timely decarbonization of both sectors. Next slide. We talk a lot about e-fuels, but there are other pieces to this puzzle. We have to be smart about the decarbonization of these sectors and prioritize the solutions, energy efficiency improvements, the electrification of ports and airports, as well as we talk a lot about e-fuels, but there are other pieces to this puzzle. We have to be smart about the decarbonization of these sectors and prioritize the solutions. Energy efficiency improvements, the electrification of ports and airports, and as well as the use of biofuels can bring immediate emission reductions. With that said, by 2050, roughly 60% of the energy consumed by these sectors will have to come from synthetic fuels produced by green hydrogen. Synthetic methanol and ammonia for shipping and synthetic kerosene, and in the long term also hydrogen for aviation. Noting that there is still a few barriers that need to be overcome before the widespread adoption of these fuels, e.g. hydrogen aircrafts are a long way. Ammonia has some aspects to solve in terms of technology, safety and operation, and in general we see sourcing of sustainable carbon as a potential bottleneck. The next slide. This transformation requires a profound change in the way the world currently operates. Global hydrogen supply is expected to reach 530 million tons per year by 2050. About 1/5 of that hydrogen will be used for e-fuels that will power these two sectors. In the power sector, electricity demand is expected to more than triple, in large part due to the electrification of the transport sector and e-fuel production. To give you a scale of the challenge, by 2050, the amount of electricity needed just for hydrogen production for all uses is larger than the entire global electricity consumption today. This puts the power sector and renewables at the heart of decarbonization efforts across different sectors and highlights the importance of cross-sectoral coordination, particularly with power sector. It is also important to remind you that for e-fuels to be truly green, the carbon needed to synthesize them needs to come from sustainable sources. So this will be another challenge. Next slide. Shipping and aviation have similar emission reduction pathways. On the technology side, both will benefit from using a combination of biofuels and e-fuels. Noting that there are still a few barriers to overcome, such as the immaturity of some technologies, some safety and operational aspects, and the sourcing of sustainable carbon. Only the supply and demand is important that this grows simultaneously. The timely deployment of infrastructure should enable this without forgetting about the certification of renewable fuels to facilitate their trade. Effective policies and regulations will be needed to increase the momentum. Regulation should be clear and ambitious and include long-term targets to point the direction and short-term milestones to send the right signals to the markets and create the necessary demand and the supply. Carbon pricing is also critical to close the price gap of renewable fuels. Cooperation among governments between the public and the private sector and across different end-use sectors can only accelerate the transition. Collaborative efforts such as green corridors are critical to demonstrate and scale up the efforts. Finally, the next slide. Finally, I'd like to remind you that IRENA is working continuously on these aspects. We have lots of resources available for free on our website, including sectoral overviews and deep dives into different aspects of the fuels I just discussed. We are also working to bring our members and partners together to advance the discussion and accelerate the transition. We are in close contact with regulator, the industry, and many other partners. We hosted in our last assembly a ministerial roundtable on decarbonizing shipping and ports earlier this year, gathering key private sector players and several ministers. We addressed these sectors during our Innovation Week earlier this year and we actively support other initiatives such as the SAM Hubs, an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial, and the Getting to Zero Coalition managed by the Global Maritime Forum. Important to say, in this next year and in its next work program, IRENA will have a strong emphasis on infrastructural aspects, and there are shipping, global ports, harbors, but also aviation and airports will play an important role to set up this infrastructure. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Roland, so much. IRENA plays a crucial role in that transition. Now it's my pleasure to call Camille for the presentation on IMO. Camille, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jane. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you. I think, and thank you again, ICAO, for taking the initiative of organizing this event during COP28. A very happy National Day as well to our hosts from the United Arab Emirates. Indeed, international aviation and international shipping have a number of things in common. Both are global transport sectors. Both are regulated through a specialized UN agency. And though both are providing this unique sectoral approach to decarbonization, which really complements and supports global efforts. Both also have a strong focus on technology, technical standards, on fuels, whilst never forgetting about the human element and safety that is absolutely paramount in both shipping and aviation. And I think as well, as an introduction, I'd like to say that aviation and shipping cannot act in isolation. And I think this is really true for both sectors. There are significant needs for renewable energy sources, creating also new opportunities for a number of countries across the world to participate in the production, in the value chain of green fuels. And hence, I'm also pleased that IRENA is with us today. I may be quicker than expected. I think we are running out of time, and I'll go very quickly through this slide on IMO's work. Just to highlight the specificity, I think, of both IMO and ICAO, is that we actually develop instruments that contain binding obligations for states and for ships, in the case of IMO, that are actually universally applied. In the case of the air pollution regulations for shipping in the Annex 6 of the MARPOL Convention, these apply to, this has been ratified by 95% of the tonnage. And so these provisions are then enforced globally through flag states and port states. Well, we have already developed instruments that have started to drive a reduction in the carbon intensity of shipping. Our aim is to reach at least 40% reduction in the carbon intensity of shipping by 2030 compared to 2008. And these, a number of instruments, I will not dive into the details of these instruments today, but they really drive innovation as well in shipping. However, energy efficiency alone will not suffice, and the larger part of the reduction effort will actually come from the use of alternative fuels. And the fuel mix that is being contemplated in shipping is quite wide, as you can see, ranging from LNG and its derivatives, biofuels, methanol, e-ammonia, hydrogen, and as well as other sources that are being explored currently in shipping. To get there, it is clear that market forces alone, as they are today, will not be enough, and a strong demand signal needs to be sent both for the production and the use of these fuels in shipping. And so, after months and almost years of negotiations, IMO member states adopted in 2023, this year in July, by unanimity, the 2023 IMO Greenhouse Gas Strategy, which really provides the global framework, policy framework for the sector, a sector that represents almost 3% of global emissions. And the vision is that IMO remains committed to reducing GHG emissions from international shipping, and as a matter of urgency, aims to phase them out as soon as possible, while promoting in the context of this strategy a just and equitable transition. This strategy also contains levels of ambition and envisages for the first time to reach net zero GHG emissions by or around close to 2050, taking into account different national circumstances. And we also have indicative checkpoints for 2030, 2040, that really provides a pathway of emissions reduction for the sector. This strategy also envisages a share of net zero or zero emission fuels and technologies to represent 5%, striving for 10% by 2030. So there's a significant challenge ahead of us. To actually deliver on these reduction targets, immediately after the adoption of the strategy, IMO member states have embarked into the development of a basket of measures to be adopted in autumn 2025 and to enter into force in 2027. And this basket will comprise of both a technical element, i.e. a fuel standard, and an economic element on the basis of a maritime emissions pricing mechanism. So this is being developed today, and I really would like to praise the efforts of member states to collaborate within IMO with a view to achieving what the sector needs in terms of regulatory certainty. In order to also ensure that we assess the impacts of these measures, we have initiated a comprehensive impact assessment in September, and we are in the middle of this work. It's a relatively complex task, given also the timelines towards 2050. It's a complex modeling exercise, as you can imagine, but it's embedded in the strategy that we need to assess and look in particular into the specific needs of developing countries, in particular Cs and LDCs, including some of these countries that are particularly vulnerable to maritime transport cost changes, and that for whom shipping is really a lifeline. In order precisely to ensure just an equitable transition to shipping, a significant enhancement of capacity building and technical cooperation is needed and will be needed. And I would like just here to highlight two examples. We have this Green Voyage 2050 project, which has just been increased to up to $20 million US. And we are currently, through this project, looking into the feasibility of production and provision of low-carbon fuels in South Africa. And we also, with a particular attention given to seafarers, have embarked into the Maritime Just Transition Task Force together with the ICS, the International Transport Workers Federation, UN Global Compact, and the ILO. And within this project, I would like just to highlight an example of what we've been doing in the Philippines to upgrade maritime training institutions, specifically looking into preparing the seafarers, the workforce, to the future fuels. So just to conclude, this decarbonization journey requires the energy of everyone in the shipping sector and beyond. It's the responsibility of IMO and its member states to develop measures to actually promote this transition. Also having a particular attention paid to the safety of this transition. To look into also just an equitable transition, and I think this really will require more and more attention given to the opportunities that the decarbonization brings to to developing countries. And for the maritime industry as well, even before the entry into effect of these regulations, I think there's a need to demonstrate leadership, to demonstrate innovation through first mover initiatives, green corridors, and same for the production of alternative fuels that will be delivered to ships. There are a number of initiatives, including the green energy hubs, that really try to strengthen the collaboration between the energy, the port, and the shipping sector. And all these initiatives are crucial to get to where we have to be. To conclude, I really invite you to have a look at what we are doing in the IMO. We keep all this information updated. There's a number of events that will be taking place for the maritime sector during COP, and you are more than welcome to join us in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille. I'm pleased now to call the next speaker, Haldane Dodd from LTAG. Haldane, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jane, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I think very fitting to have both transport modes here together. I think also it's really nice to hear from the president of ICAO and the head of the IMO speaking about each other's sectors so much in their interventions. There's a lot of commonality between the two sectors, and of course a lot of specificities as well. But we've heard from IMO, we heard from Jane, actually some very similar themes being developed, particularly when it comes to international policy and the work that needs to happen to get us, both sectors, on the path to net zero. Also very fitting to have IRENA here as well. I think the cross-cutting nature of a lot of these challenges is something that we all need to tackle together. I don't want to spend too much time beyond what we've heard already, but I think it's really important to sort of consider where we've come from, particularly in the aviation side of things that we know very well. We've been through several phases so far. So first of all was setting the foundations in terms of policy, in terms of technology to do with sustainable aviation fuels, making sure that we're going through the testing and the safety protocols that aviation holds very, very dear as well. We've provided the direction with net zero agreed not only within the aviation industry in 2021, but also at the ICAO level with governments last year at the Assembly. And of course, as we've heard from the ICAO Secretariat, CAF3 really provides that direction on sustainable aviation fuels in particular right now, and something that we all need to be getting along with. There's been significant progress in the area. We now have 50 airlines representing about 40% of global traffic that have a 5% or greater voluntary goal on SAF uptake. Most of them are 10% by 2030, and some of them up to 30% of their fuel they want to be SAF by 2030. That's really great to see that voluntary action taking place. Over $45 billion worth of forward purchase agreements for sustainable aviation fuel by airlines. And a lot of that came during COVID as well, the worst time in aviation economic history, and also bad time for most of us as well. Still, some commitments there from senior management to make sure that they are playing their role. The big challenge, of course, is actually getting the fuel that we need by 2030, and that's really where all of our efforts need to be focused now. We've got 7 SAF pathways already certified for use in commercial aviation, another 8 in the pipeline in the next 2 to 3 years. And what this means is that we've got a suite of different options available to us, a menu of different feedstock and pathway options available to aviation, so that each country can look at the best options available in their own environment and then make the best use of that. It's not just one size fits all, and we saw that with shipping as well, going along a similar time frame. So these are all great things, but of course more needs to be done and faster. And I think that the agreement that was reached last week at ICAO helps provide a bit of momentum. We need to continue that momentum even further within the sector in a voluntary sense, but also want to see governments starting to trickle down that global ICAO policy into national policy action as well. And of course, we now have a specific ask. Now that we've agreed to go net zero 2050, now that we've got a number in mind when it comes to SAF in the next 6 years, we can go out to the financial community, we can go out to governments, we can go out to the energy industry and ask for very specific things. So that's a really good foundational work that needs to take place. So ICAO has its work program. Jane's going to be very, very busy, and her team with ACT-SAF, as she mentioned. Also, I think the Finvest Hub is going to play a crucial role in making sure that the financing can be directed to the right places. We also, within industry, have our work cut out. We've been spending time the last year speaking with the finance industry in particular, preparing also airlines for the work that they need to do to bring SAF in as well. And it's often sort of commented that sometimes SAF flights, SAF demonstration flights we saw earlier this week with Virgin Atlantic, for example, across the Atlantic, are a little bit of a publicity stunt. In reality, they're actually a really important opportunity for airlines to learn what needs to go into SAF use. So all we encourage for those airlines in particular that are at a very early stage in this journey is do one flight, do one demonstration flight, and learn everything you need to do to make sure that you can get on to flight 2 and 3 and 5 and 10 and into the future. Because the way that airline operations work, the need to talk to the pilots, the need to talk to your insurance companies, the need to talk with the fuel procurement team, all of that process is the same process for one flight as it is for 1 million flights. So making sure you do that one flight is really, really important. The other thing that we are concentrating on at the moment is talking to that finance community. Not only the private finance community, the big banks, the brand names that we all know, but of course, and this is another role that ICAO really needs to work with us on, is the role of blended finance. Bringing in public, bringing in institutional investors, bringing in the multilateral development banks and private finance, stacking them all together and making sure that we can develop SAF all over the world. At the moment, almost all the SAF, in fact, almost all the SAF that we are using today comes from North America and Europe. We need to make sure that this is a story that can be told everywhere in the world and make sure that there are SAF industries, new energy economies, industries in countries everywhere in the world, and the jobs that come with that are really important as well. So we know what we need to do. I think the biggest challenge to me anyway is the traditional energy sector. And despite all the advertising we see from a lot of the traditional oil companies, we're not seeing the commitments there. And hopefully the agreement that we had at ICAO, some of the things that we've been hearing here at COP really provide that spur to make sure that they are in the right place to help support us in our net zero journey as well. So that's all I had to say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Alden. Yeah, it's, when you talk about ACT-SAF and everything that we are doing in all the different regions, and I have to say, it's, if we had a few countries, counting in our hands that were producing fuel for aviation, now we have the potential for 193 to do so. And that's a very exciting moment, I think, in history. We have the basis for any of our countries to engage. And now we have to make it happen. And ACT-SAF, we are doing exactly that. So we are already, please go to our website because we already have so many feasibility studies, and we are matching, donors, those that know with those that want to know, those that want to receive feasibility studies. It's a very exciting time for us. The other thing I was hearing how then came to my mind is this issue of the feedstocks, right? Sometimes we are not even saying, but there is already some mix of fuel in the tank of the flights that you're taking on a regular basis. So a lot of airlines are already flying with SAF and it's in their tanks. But I wanted just to bring to your attention, we keep on thinking about used cooking oil, camelina, blah, blah, blah. Those that are more famous to be used, gasification from waste or something. We have had, I always try to mention this one from Japan that I found so interesting. In Japan, they made one test flight with used cotton T-shirts. They took cotton T-shirts, used cotton T-shirts, they extracted the material, and they produced SAF. So there's no limit, you know, if we are very, 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 very concentrating and imagine all the waste that's out there, the things that we can do, it's really, really, really a completely different world. So we have to think about the new world. On that note, I'm so pleased to now pass the floor to Nelson Mojaro, who's the head of Innovation and Partnerships for ICS. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think we have some slides. We need to...
It's okay. We can handle it if you prefer. Go for it.
First of all, first I want to recognize the leadership of the UAE of having this COP28 here. I'm sure all of you have enjoyed the first few days, and also that you keep hydrated. It's pretty warm here. Second, and important, of course, is to thank ICAO, thank the IMO for the invitation and your leadership to convene us here in this very important moment at COP28. It is important because of the challenges ahead, I believe. And I would also like to thank IRENA for all of their support, because it has been an agency that has focused some of its efforts on the hard-to-abate sectors. And as you heard before, cross-sectoral activities, it's something that ICS has been leading on, particularly IRENA has been the partner on the energy sector that allows us to go into technical details of how can this be achieved, and also on the pathway forward for 2050. So let me just begin in my presentation to recognize the success story of the shipping sector this year and the member states that agreed the revised strategy for greenhouse gas reductions this year at the IMO. They have given us a clear signal that they're committed, that they are for an implementation that can help the shipping industry reach net zero around 2050. It is a tremendous success for the industry, and now it is an important moment for us to work together towards achieving that in the time period that we have. We have heard aviation and shipping have commonalities. We have been sharing through the earliest panel, but we have a major distinction, and you perhaps can see it on the image there. We're thinking on a dual role for shipping, which of course will require the fuels to decarbonize, but also we may become the enabler of the transportation of these fuels for other sectors. That gives us a very, very important role to play, not just with respect to our own efforts, but also to help others achieve the decarbonization goals faster, including potentially aviation. But now that we have moved on, let me just say, we've done it in the past. What have we done in the past? Achieve transitions. It's not the first time that we look at transitioning from one source of fuel to other, in the case of shipping, to use it as a propulsion mechanism. We went from wind, also to coal, to combustion engines, and now we're looking into a new transition. But this transition is different in three ways. First of all, we're looking at the multi-fuel future. Aviation is different. We heard about SAF. We're talking about methanol, ammonia, LNG, a variety of fuels that the industry is looking to use to achieve a decarbonization. The second is, of course, the timeline. We have to do this in 27 years. 27 years, and as you can see, the other transitions have taken longer to get, and they were market-driven, not policy-driven. And the third, I think, and most important to highlight for me at least, it is that as other sectors, we're looking into electrification, and IRENA has pointed out very clearly that this is an example of other sectors as well, but we're looking at direct and indirect electrification to achieve our goals, because we require those fuels. How much? It's often underestimated, the scale of what is required. We're looking to move from zero terawatt hours, if we're looking at green production of hydrogen-based fuels, for example, towards 3,000 terawatt hours, which is equivalent to double the renewable energy production in the world just for fuels for shipping. It's a tremendous opportunity, but also a tremendous challenge, because as you may know, it will take time for those plants to be allowed, to have the permits, to be provided in different parts of the world, but also vessels take time to design, take time to plan, infrastructure needs to be put in place. It's 3,000 terawatt hours. We don't just require megawatt plants, gigawatt plants that we have started here this week. We need to achieve terawatts, which is a tremendous scale, and I think it's often underestimated. We heard announcements, and we have been hearing announcements about hydrogen-based fuels, sustainable-based fuels throughout the world this year. Unfortunately, and IRENA has pointed out, together with others, what is required to achieve 1.5 scenario, and also that these projects have to be strategically located close to a port in order for use of the maritime sector, not only to decarbonize, but to help others achieve their goals. Only 4% of the projects that have been announced have financial investment decision. And unfortunately, out of those, and Bloomberg estimates this, only 10% of those have a buyer. It is a tremendous task of two things. First, make sure the awareness is there of a strategic role for not just us, but for others. And second, that we address the challenge ahead with respect to making sure we facilitate that. IMO and member states will play a key role in helping the shipping sector decarbonize and achieve and address these targets. Why? By facilitating in the discussions they will have the economic measures, as well as the other basket of measures that they are considering, in order to help reduce the cost gap between the premium fuels, at the moment are the green fuels, and what we are using in the industry. It is therefore paramount that we work together across sectors, but we make sure we work together with the energy ministers and the planners in order to facilitate this transition to happen. But when we talk about 1.5 and the role that the shipping sector may provide, we have to remember that we're also transporter of other fuels already. We move oil, gas, coal, but the important bit here to highlight is as we advance on the transition, two things have to change. A reduction of fossil fuels, of course, and an increase and a change of the mix of low carbon fuels that shipping can transport, whether it's sustainable biomass or as well ammonia and other fuels. This has to happen in order for shipping as well to contribute to the global decarbonization goals. Because in shipping sector, we're not just looking for fuels for us. We're actually trying to enable fuels for the world, for all sectors to benefit. We have started to develop the partnerships with committed governments that have in their plans to provide three things: the ambition of the scale, the incentives and regulation to facilitate that, and the consistency of long-term planning to facilitate those investments coming in. it is of great importance to keep the momentum the IMO and the member states have put forward this year in order to work together with the governments, with the ports, with the energy providers, with the finance sector, just as aviation has done in different fronts. With that, I thank you very much for your attention.
So interesting presentations. I'm also learning today from Maritime. So we have one more speaker that could not be with us here, but is an essential part of our process, which is from the environmental NGOs. We have him connected. Dan Rutherford, he is from he's Director of Aviation and Marine Programs from the International Council on Clean Transportation, ICCT. Dan, you have the floor. Let's see if...
Great.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Can you hear me okay?
All good.
Okay.
Dan,
thank
we
you
can
very much
hear
for
you
having
very
me at this
well.
event. I'm sorry?
We can hear you very well. All good.
I see. Thank you. There's a little bit of an echo on my end, but I will try to talk through it. So again, thank you for having me today. Unfortunately, this event comes about 7 hours before I catch my own. But I'm very happy to be here with friends and colleagues virtually. By way of introduction, I direct the shipping and aviation programs at the International Council on Clean Transportation. ICCT has been working for more than 15 years to support both the IMO and I wanted to really start with congratulations to both organizations and also to IRENA for putting together this event. There have been very significant policy developments over the past several years that really have started to put both sectors on a transition to net zero emissions by mid-centuries. And I wanted to start out by acknowledging the importance of not only the LTAG agreement last year, but also the outcomes of the recent CAF 3 meeting. And of course, the agreement to a revised IMO greenhouse gas strategy earlier this year. With that as background, I wanted to magnify again what previous speakers have said, in that this is a tremendous challenge. Both sectors are extremely reliant upon fossil fuels. And the baseline today is that fossil fuels provide 99.9% of the energy needs for both sectors. So there is a tremendous amount of work to be done, but we are seeing the green shoots for the energy transition today. A few general observations from me, and then I'll talk first about aviation and then shipping, and then go through a few principles for guiding the energy transition in international transport. Can I quickly check if the slides that I provided are available?
Yes.
I hope
yes,
you can get
it
those
is.
up while I make some initial comments.
Go ahead.
Now, there have been a variety of technology roadmaps that have been developed for both sectors. And if you look at those roadmaps, you will see that clean fuels are going to be central to the emissions mitigations we need for both shipping and aviation. For example, if you look specifically at the roadmaps that have been developed by industry, government, and civil society, for aviation, they conclude that about 2/3 of all mitigation that we need by mid-century will come from clean fuels. That means that in addition to international coordination, national governments will have a central role to play in requiring and supporting the large landside investments in clean fuels upstream of planes and ships. If you could go back one slide, please. This includes the incorporation of international aviation and shipping into national clean fuel mandates. I wanted to talk a little bit about aviation and particularly the long-term aspirational goal agreement that Jane, you highlighted for us earlier. We're big fans of the LTAG agreement. We've been strongly supportive of that. And in fact, we really appreciate all of the detailed technical analysis that went into developing that framework. Last month, ICCT released a paper looking at the investment needs for aviation. And in essence, we did a secondary analysis of the fantastic detailed LTAG work that was put together by the Secretariat and other stakeholders. And I'm just going to present a couple slides here that show some of the results. So we looked at the 30 years of investments that we expect are needed for a net zero transition for international aviation. And here you can see a waterfall chart of sort of how the $5 trillion of investments are expected to be stacked in terms of specific technologies. That's sort of on the far left and the right of this graph. You can also see about the $1 trillion in fuel savings that we expect will be reaped through these investments at the far right. The big takeaway is that the bulk of the investments is, again, going to be into clean fuels, with a particular need to focus on investments in power to liquids, or e-fuels, as we've heard earlier, but also substantial investments in emerging biofuels. We expect that smaller investments will be needed in other technologies, including mature biofuels, direct investments in aircraft research and development, and then hydrogen and low carbon aviation fuels. Next slide. We've also looked into how these investments will break down in terms of the stakeholders themselves. So this is kind of a classic Sankey diagram showing at left the stakeholders that are going to be involved in the aviation net zero transition, and then at right the technologies that they will be needed to support. Big takeaway here is that clearly governments do have a role. According to our analysis, about 1/5 of the total investments needed for aviation will come from governments, with the balance coming from mostly industry stakeholders. Governments will have a critical role in supporting the emerging fuels and covering incremental capital investments, and then price support for the advanced fuels. We conclude that little support is actually needed or recommended for mature aviation fuels, particularly first-generation biofuels and LCAPs. Just to talk briefly about shipping, we see some general trends, some similar trends there as well. We are huge fans and supporters of the IMO's revised greenhouse gas strategy, in particular the indicative guideposts for 2030 and 2040, which point to the need for 20 to 30% reduction in absolute emissions from shipping in 2030 and 70 to 80% reductions in 2040 in order to put the sector on path towards a net zero future. We agree with the other speakers that clean fuels, especially green hydrogen and its derivatives, will be key to decarbonize international shipping. And we believe that mandates for those fuels will play a central role to support them. Next slide. So I wanted to close with a few general principles for how to support the clean energy transition we need for international transport. And this is drawn from our research and also our experience in both international venues. The first is that we really do need to focus government support on emerging technologies that can be subsidized down the cost curve. These are the e-fuels and the advanced biofuels and hydrogen fuels we've all been talking about. More mature technologies and fuels can be supported best through mandates for their use. We do agree with others. It's important to discriminate between good and bad fuels on a well-to-wake life cycle basis. People who know this space well know that it's quite possible to create an alternative fuel that looks quite clean at the tailpipe, but in fact are as dirty as fossil fuels once you take into account upstream emissions associated with their production. We do see a clear need to be comprehensive, and by this I mean cover not just carbon dioxide, but all greenhouse gases, ignoring powerful climate forcers like methane, nitrous oxide, and contrails may generate unintended consequences in policy. Fourth, we do see a need to be timely in promoting measures that we need now. A lot of the long-term transition and where we want to be in 2050. But we recognize that there are opportunities today to slow climate change dramatically. For example, by eliminating black carbon emissions or abating contrails. There's also a time element for some fuels themselves, including liquefied natural gas, which scientists tell us can be especially damaging to the climate over short timescales due to leakage throughout its production cycle and use. The idea that LNG can be a bridge to future decarbonization. Fifth, the research suggests that following the polluter pays principle wherever possible is the most sustainable way to generate support for the energy transition. And in simple terms, polluter pays suggests that those parties which are most responsible for the pollution should bear most of the cost for abating them. And then finally, and this is a little bit of a cautionary note and maybe not that popular in this group, but it's important to be, I would say, humble and realistic about where shipping and aviation fit in among the greater decarbonization effort. We do need to recognize that there are likely higher and better uses for renewable energy today. For example, using renewable electricity directly to retire coal-fired power generation or to electrify road transport can produce larger emission reductions at a lower cost. And so some patience is in order and some humility to make sure that we don't have any unintended consequences from public policy. But that's the balance of my remarks. Congratulations again to the sponsors of this event. And I'm greatly looking forward to seeing how the energy transition progresses and gains momentum from these two critical sectors.
Thank you so much, Dan. And safe flights to COP. I hope you get one with some SAF already. So before we move to, I think we will have one or two questions possibility, but if I just don't want to lose the opportunity to thank the panel for an incredible session. I think it was super instructive, and we could at least showcase the efforts that are ongoing in aviation and shipping together with our cooperation with the energy sector. So I think that's very important that each one, doesn't matter if it's 1%, 1.2%, 3%, but each one does its part in that journey. With that, you guys tell me when we have to leave the room, but let's try at least a few questions if you raise your hand. So go ahead. You are so energetic. Go for it.
Carbon market related events, and we heard CORSIA mentioned many times as a benchmark of quality, including related to the sustainability criteria that was established over years in CORSIA. And my question then relates to SAF and how ICAO is thinking about implementing sustainability criteria or thinking about playing a role in the sustainability of SAF.
So sometimes we get that question, CORSIA's global offsetting scheme. And then we start talking about CORSIA, and ICAO comes and start talking about the sustainability criteria for SAF when we are talking about an offsetting scheme. Why is that? So let's just explain. In fact, CORSIA is a global offsetting scheme, but the R in the middle it's about reduction as well. And when Corsair was conceived a while ago now, if I think, it was really the first global policy to incentivize SAF. So what happened in Corsair, we said, it's an offsetting scheme, but by the time the airlines will comply with their commitments under Corsair, so if they are here, they have emitted more than the baseline would allow us to do, so they have to reduce that amount of tons of CO2 or compensate that with the market. They also can compensate the same tons of CO2, not buying directly from the carbon market, but by the use of SAF and LCAF. And for that, we had to do 1 ton, and that ton of CO2 comes from the life cycle considerations of the use of sustainable aviation fuels and low carbon fuels. And for that, we had to create an entire criteria for the certification of fuels that were eligible for Corsair, because we said it's not any fuel that someone comes and say, oh, it's sustainable. It has to have the criteria. So, and it has the whole set of criteria, environmental criteria, from water, from use of soil, the amount of CO2 it produces in a life cycle basis, all of that. So that's why I understand your question and why are we talking about this Corsair stuff. So there was no global criteria for sustainability of fuels that we could use directly in ICAO. So we are aviation, but we had to work with the fuel producers, with the energy sector to come out with a criteria that would be a robust criteria for us to consider SAF for aviation. And that's now, last week, what happened is they said, now, for the entire framework, not just for Corsair, we are using that criteria as of our criteria for considering SAF. So that was a big achievement in terms of ensuring that, I don't like to use greenwash, but that when we say SAF, it's SAF, it's sustainable. When we say LCAF, it's really low carbon, it's under the criteria. Thank you for your question. I have this gentleman, and go ahead. They are stopping, and I have one, no more? So sorry. But they will kick us out, that's the problem. I'm happy to answer questions. I think the entire panel, the same thing. Guys, we are here, but we cannot be here. We have to go to be there. I thank you. I thank the audience for your patience. I thank you guys for your patience too. Sorry for going ahead. And I thank all of those that have been with us online. Thank you for your interest as well. Thank you.